G'day everyone, welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update today, the 30th of January 2016. My name's Chris Nitzo. This update sponsored by a major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. Folks, Tropical Cyclone Stan, you can see him here rotating to the north of Port Hedland, is tracking in a southeasterly direction. Will eventually hit the coast at some stage, either overnight tonight or very early in the morning tomorrow. At this stage, expected to hit the coast around the Pardu or just to the east of Pardu, but there is an error margin going from around about De Grey all the way through to around Sandfire Roadhouse. So anywhere in that region is where we're expecting the system to hit. There are still some model outliers that push it all the way west to Port Hedland. There's also an interesting scenario where it could hit the coast and then just jut westwards, just inland of the coast, in which case Port Hedland will see a period of very severe weather, but at this point in time, the general consensus on the guidance is that it will track south-southeast to southeast and make landfall, as I say, around about Pardu, which would mean that Port Hedland probably going to see a period of gales and a period of heavy rain, particularly as or after the system hits the coast. Bureau is still expecting it to intensify to a Category 3, and there's nothing to suggest that it won't do that. And once again, you can see here the western edge of the error margin out around De Grey, the eastern edge out just to the west of Sandfire Roadhouse. And the system, while the warning extends west to Wim Creek, we don't expect the tropical cyclone to move towards Port Hedland or west of Port Hedland. And even though the warning extends east and north to Broome, it's not because they expect the cyclone to move in that direction. What it is the fact that the system is asymmetrical. That means it's lopsided. It means that a lot more wind is located to the north of the system than there is to the south. So this northeast quadrant particularly, as the system makes landfall, will extend gales a long way further to the north and east of the actual coastal crossing location. Alrighty, taking a look at the animation here from today and into this evening, we can see the system, it really hasn't moved very quickly, and it also hasn't intensified very quickly today. We can just make out the development or what the system's trying to do, which is make an eye just in there. So you can just see that little eye right in there in the center of that circulation. But it's really struggling to get itself an eye. If we take a look at the microwave, we can see that the system has a really an almost exposed eye here on the southeastern quadrant, but we have very, very strong convection here on the northern quadrant. So this is where it packs its greatest punch at the moment. The expectation is that as the system begins to wrap around properly, we'll start to see the strongest area of weather on this northeast to southeastern quadrant. So in there as the system makes landfall. So if you happen to be east of the coastal crossing center, then you're probably going to see the strongest weather associated with the cyclone. If you happen to be west of it, you're not going to see as strong, at least in terms of wind strengths. You're still going to see a lot of rainfall though. The reason it hasn't really intensified as quickly as one would have expected based on what we were looking at yesterday is that we have seen an increase in vertical shear in the region, and we've got easterly shear here. So the shear's coming in from the east. I'll just change that font so it makes it a little bit easier to see. So we've got this easterly shear coming in and dragging a lot of the convection away towards the west. It's coming in at around about 20 knots. So it's moderate shear, and it is inhibiting development somewhat, but it's not strong enough to kill the system. I guess the million-dollar question here that Port Hedland residents particularly are wondering is whether or not this system has the potential to come back towards Port Hedland, so moving to the south-southwest. At this stage, I mean, I would never rule anything out when it comes to cyclones, but I would say that it is very unlikely for the system to move in a south-southwest direction. You can see here, what I've done here is overlaid the deep layer mean steering flow. So the steering flow right over the top of the system suggests that a southeastward motion will ensue over the coming 12 to 18 hours all the way until landfall. So I do find it very unlikely that the system will track back here towards the south-southwest to make a direct hit on Port Hedland. The computer models in general also agree on this south-southeast to southeast motion all the way until landfall, and you can see furthest west just here to the east of De Grey, and the furthest east is east of Pardue. The Joint Typhoon Warning Centre expecting to see some sort of intensification, albeit moderate, as it approaches the coast here. Expecting to hit the coast at this stage, they're saying around about 2 AM WA time. It would need to get a little bit of a move on from where it is now to do that. But you can see it makes a direct hit on Pardue. There's still a fair error margin, and Port Hedland's still included in the error margin for the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre, but I would struggle to see it moving directly south or even south-southwest, which is what it needs to do from here. The latest UK Met model, we see rapid intensification of the system and a direct track here to the southeast, right over the top of Pardue. The latest CMC model, we can see tracks the system just to the east of Pardue. The latest GFS computer forecast model, we see pretty close to a De Grey river crossing. And the very inaccurate NavGem model we can see has a crossing around Pardue or just to the east of Pardue. Looking at the ensemble projections here, we've got the FIM model showing us a crossing somewhere around the De Grey area all the way through to just east of Pardue. And the UK Met model very similar here with a crossing just around Pardue itself. And very similar scenarios shown on the European. So folks, I've made it fairly clear here what the computer models do expect. The only thing is this possibility on some of the outlying models that once it hits the coast, it might just jut to the southwest a little, in which case it could temporarily enhance the weather across Port Hedland. But even that seems to be a bit of an outlying scenario. Now that's not meaning that there won't be any severe weather around Port Hedland overnight tonight and into early tomorrow. So let's take a look at what's happening around Hedland. The hurricane-specific model from America will give us a better idea at the structure. Now, don't pay too much attention to the intensity. The American model does occasionally get a little bit overexcited with tropical cyclone intensities. So the big thing to note, though, is where this really strong wind is going to be. So you can see Port Hedland is located west of where the system crosses. So the system crosses around that Pardue area. Now, you can see it's this northern and particularly this northeastern quadrant here that is producing the heaviest or the strongest wind, I should say. And you can see the system crosses sometime between 2 and 5 in the morning and then continues inland. And you can see once again it's the eastern half of the system that packs the punch as it moves inland. And you can see there that we're looking at wind speeds getting up to that 35 to 40 knot mark as the system continues inland. But as I said, look, don't pay too much attention to the actual intensity of the winds because as I mentioned, the model does get a little overexcited. But do pay attention to where the structure of those winds is going to be. And you can see here that it's on the eastern half of the system as it makes landfall. So that will continue as the system continues further inland. When it comes to precipitation from the cyclone, we can see that the expectation is that as the system crosses, we'll probably see some of the heaviest rain from it. So once the system is inland, and so you can see now we're looking at 8 AM tomorrow WA time, and that's when we're starting to see this heavier sort of rainfall pushing right in and possibly moving as far west as Port Hedland, some of that heavier stuff. But this is rainfall directly associated with the tropical cyclone. So as the system crosses the coast here, just around that Pardue area on the European, once again, we can see that it's after the system crosses the coast, or as the system crosses the coast, that we're looking at this really heavy area of rainfall. Now, because the system's moved a little bit further east and expected to cross around Pardue, which is around about 100 or so kilometres away from Port Hedland, the fact is that a lot of this heavier rainfall will now be shifted a lot further to the east. And so Port Hedland probably only looking at moderate falls itself, but the heavy falls won't be too far to the east of Port Hedland. So don't go in there expecting cataclysmic rainfalls from this particular system. Now, as it moves inland, though, it will continue to pack, as I said, it'll pack a punch windwise to its east, but it'll also bring through a fair amount of rain as it pushes through. So you can see here, expected to move just east of Marble Bar, just east of Nullagine, and continue into the interior here of WA. And with it, we have a trough system which is also enhancing shower and thunderstorm activity. So that trough system is now being fed by the cyclone, or the remnants of the cyclone, as it tracks in towards the southeast, and you can see it pushing pretty well into the desert regions of WA over the next 24 to 48 hours. So looking at the expected rainfall overnight tonight and into very early tomorrow, we can see that most of the rainfall located offshore with the system. So it's quite a bizarre system, because most of the rainfall at the moment is located west of the circulation, whereas what will happen in the future is that rainfall will more likely be located just east of the circulation as it transitions. So tomorrow we're looking at heavy falls just to the east of Port Hedland. As I say, probably more moderate falls around Port Hedland. There could be a period there of about 3 or 4 hours where you might see some moderate to heavy rainfall, but overall most of that activity is now expected to be east of you. Once again, Karratha, anyone sort of west of Wim Creek is going to miss out now, because the system is too far to the east. We're also going to see some decent shower activity all the way north to Broome. As we look at Monday then, we see the system tracks very rapidly away to the southeast in response to the upper level trough, which is guiding it, and the system is pretty close to the border here of South Australia, so it's certainly moving at a great rate of knots once it hits the coast. Now up here further to the north, we have a monsoon trough organising, so the monsoon won't dip down with the system. The monsoon trough will reorganise up through the Timor Sea. And in the medium term, therein lies another couple of issues. So we're expecting to see a fairly strong little low develop here along the central or North Queensland coast, and we're also expecting another low to start to move into the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf or the North Kimberley as we get into next weekend. So it looks like a very interesting period of weather across Australia, even after Stan makes landfall. Thanks for watching this update. If you are a subscriber, please join me for a live update, a brief one. I'll only go through any questions that you might have that haven't been clarified tonight. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again tomorrow night. If you'd like to take part in that live broadcast, go to AusCycloneChasers.com.au, click on subscribe to OCC, and help us chase tropical cyclones. Thanks very much for watching. Talk to you again tomorrow night.